Yeah, g'day guys, Joel, mate, Big J here from Fight View 360 Australia and T Street Controversy. I decided to do my own video. I haven't had a chance to do a video in a while, so I thought, bugger it, I'm going to do my own video. Start my own thing, see what happens. So predominantly I'll be talking about Australian boxing, but I will go into other things, political views or what's the latest craze on social media, all that sort of shit, but predominantly I'll stay with Australian boxing. So that's what my channel is going to offer. There's certain things that, I don't want to talk about on my own channel, and certain things that I don't. So we'll get straight into it with Australian boxing as a whole. So boxing as a whole, I think, people say boxing as a whole is looking pretty good. I disagree, because if boxing is that piss weak, it has to rely on a 58-year-old Mike Tyson, right, who hasn't had a decent fight in 20-odd years, fighting some punk YouTube Disney fucking idiot like Jake Paul. All he does is beat up old, washed-up UFC fighters. Boxing's in fucking dire straits, because if they rely on that novelty bullshit to sell tickets, then something is majorly wrong. I mean, I know that I'm Australian, and let me tell you, Australians, when it comes to novelty fights, Australians are the absolute kings of it. We started it. We started novelty fights. Like two old guys fighting, like Roy Jones and Tyson. That's nothing new. Australia did that back in 2008 when Jeff Fenech wanted to settle the score for Zuma Nelson. Right? Jeff Fenech was 44 at the time. Zuma Nelson was 49, and they had a 10-round slap-a-thon. They were both gassed by the 8th round. But of course, what do you expect? Both men were in their mid to late 40s and hadn't fought in 12 years. So it was a novelty fight. Everyone thought it was a bit of nostalgia. Everyone enjoyed it. I certainly did. But at the end of the day, it was two guys she should have been retired. So, and stayed retired, but that's okay. No one got hurt, so that's all that matters. It was a nice little novelty fight. Football players, Australia hasn't gone the extremes of basketball players, but footy players going into boxing, it's nothing new. It's been happening for decades. Professional football players, both NRL and ARL, used to box on the off season to keep themselves in shape, because the off seasons weren't as long as they used to be. Now off seasons are like 6-7 weeks. The season finishes. The season goes from March to October, mid-March to the start of October, and by mid-November they're back in training again. They get 6 weeks off. Back in the day, remember, footballers in this country have only been pro for probably about 25 years, right, 30 at the most, and most of them used to work jobs or do other things. So a footballer doing boxing on the side is nothing new. It's just thanks to Anthony Mundine, who single-handedly saved the sport. It gets more notoriety and gets more notification than it used to. So we haven't got to the YouTubers fighting boxers. That's happened. What was the fella's name? The rugby union player whose name I can't remember. Starts with, I think his last name started with a Q, but he fought some tradie punk that was calling him out on social media, and I cannot remember for the life of him what his name was. A very famous Australian Wallaby rugby union player. I can't remember his name, to be honest. But novelty fights are nothing new to Australian for honestly, for the past past 20 years, 25 years, novelty fights has kept Australian boxing going. But now we're in a very good spot that now we've got so many legitimate fighters getting world titles, winning world titles, and getting upsets of the year. And it all started when Jeff Horn defeated Pacquiao in 2007. Simple as that. Ever since Jeff Horn defeated Manny Pacquiao in Suncorp Stadium in Brisbane on July 2nd, which has just gone over its 7-year anniversary, Australian boxing has changed, and changed for the better. We have more world title fights than anyone. We have had bigger world title fights. 2022 was the absolute biggest year in Australian boxing history. We had not one but two undisputed title fights in Australia, in Melbourne, which I actually got the privilege to go to. Thank you, T Street, for sending me to those fights. Even though it's just up the road, I live in an hour from Melbourne. All right. We've had the biggest names in boxing: Pacquiao, Devin Haney, and Lomachenko earlier in the year. I had the privilege to go to Perth to watch Lomachenko versus George Kambosos Jr. All right. And ever since Jeff won that massive upset of the century against Pacquiao, Australian boxing's never been better. You know, as I said, 2022, 2 massive undisputed title fights. Haney versus Kambosos 1 and 2, within 4 months of each other. Jai Pataya on the 5th anniversary of Horn getting the upset of the century. Jai Pataya gets the upset of the year in 2022, defeating Mias Brias for the IBF and Ring Magazine cruiserweight titles. So massive upset there. Year before that, George Kambosos Jr. got the upset of the year against Teofimo Lopez in November of 2021 for the unified titles at lightweight. Right? And just recently, just within the last month, Liam Paro, so far, upset of the year, defeating Subriel Matias for the 140 IBF super lightweight belt. So Australian boxing's looking pretty good at the moment. I think 2022 is our best year because not only did we have the 2 George fights, Jai won his belt, Ebony Bridges won her IBF bantamweight title and successfully defended it in the biggest all-female Australian boxing fight in history. A little bit pissed off that one was in England, that should have been in Australia. So it was a Queensland versus New South Wales all-Australian female fight for the world title, and it was in England. Wasn't very happy about that, but we got Susie Ramadan versus Shanika Johnson, also a Aussie Australian girls fight for the IBF super bantamweight title. So the last few years has been good. This year not looking too good. Unfortunately, I think we've had at least 4 world title fights I can think of. Liam Wilson had his against Vince Valdez. George had his against, obviously, Lomachenko. Tim Tszyu had his fight against Fendora, and all these blokes come up short. Unfortunately, Mick Zarafa had the worst title fight I've ever seen from an Australian. WBA middleweight title against Indus Lara and got knocked out in 2 rounds. Terrible, terrible fight. Honestly, I think that's the worst world title fight I've ever seen from an Australian. Ever. So, but the only one who's actually managed to win a world title at the moment in this year, besides Liam, of course, is Sky Nicholson. Sky Nicholson is the current 126 female WBC featherweight title holder. And anyone who knows their history knows that that title has been in Australian hands before. The first woman to win that was a lady called Sharon Amos. She won it back, I think, in the late 90s. An Australian girl, born and raised in Geelong, now lives on the Gold Coast, Hall of Famer in Australian boxing. So that WBC featherweight belt is back around the waist of an Australian, which is fantastic. So big things coming for Australian boxing. I hope, because at the moment Eddie Hearn has got all 3 major title holders. He's got Jai Pataya, Liam Paro, and Sky Nicholson, and the plan is to get all 3 on a massive card in Brisbane. I hope it happens because Sky's born and raised from Brisbane. Jai, I think, was born somewhere in New South Wales, but lives on the Gold Coast, which is down the road from Brisbane. And Liam, who was born and raised Mackay, but he's been living in Brisbane for several years now. So I hope that they have a massive all-3 title fight in Brisbane, and I will make sure I get every effort to get there, because that would probably be the biggest card Australia's ever had. I mean, nothing's ever going to beat Pacquiao Horn, but for significance, for world titles, that would be absolutely massive, and I think they could put it in Suncorp Stadium and get a fair chunk of people there. You know, if you can promote anything properly, if you're a good promoter, I mean, people, as I said, we're selling Mike Tyson versus bloody Jake Paul, for God's sake. I mean, if we can sell that, some old bastard who's nearly 60 years old versus some YouTube punk who just spends his time beating up washed up UFC fighters and basketball players, surely Australia can get 50,000 people to rock up to Suncorp Stadium to watch 3 legitimate world title holders defend their titles. So hopefully it's going to happen. Hopefully this is a massive year. Hopefully it gets done at the end of the year, in the summertime, in the late spring, early summertime in Australia, because the weather up there would be absolutely fantastic. I'm looking forward to it. Big announcements coming on the No Limit card, which is tomorrow night, featuring Sam Goodman taking on some Thai bloke whose name I can't remember. Is that Nikita Tszyu? Next fight is going to happen. The announcement, I think he's taking on Karan Mazuria and Tim Tszyu. Hopefully his next bout, which hopefully is against Bakram Murtazaliev for Bakram's IBF belt. Hopefully they do it in Australia at the end of the year, around October. And that would be another massive fight that they could have on the Gold Coast or Sydney. Hopefully No Limit gets that done, because I want to see Tim back in the ring and fighting for a world title at his level. His fight should only be for world titles. Whether he's the challenger or the champion, they should, at his level, only be for world titles. So I hope he gets his rematch with Fundora, but obviously PBC want Fundora fighting Spence. And hopefully Tim fights Bakram Murtazaliev, gets the winner of Crawford Madrimov, which I think Crawford will smack the crap out of Madrimov. And then fights Crawford, and then the winner of that fights Fundora, the winner of Fundora Spence, which I believe Fundora will crack the crap out of Errol Spence. I think he's absolutely done. He's absolutely shot. He's had too much happen to him. He's had, 2 car crashes and the beat down that Crawford gave him. I really think Errol Spence is done, and hopefully it stays that way. But many more videos coming, guys. I'm going to do this individual video thing now. Hopefully it branches out into something good. I'm going to be focused on Australian boxing. There's other things I also can mention. But I just want to put out this one, see how it goes. Hopefully get some good views. Hopefully, subscribe to the channel. Like and subscribe, because, I think once you get over 1,000 subscribers, you get monetized, so you actually make a bit of coin out of it, which would be good. But that's all I've got for this video. I want to try to keep it under 15 minutes. So I really hope that, things are going well for Australian boxing. I really hope that, I've got many more subjects to talk into. I want to really talk about the No Limit thing with Fox Sports. I don't think it's doing anyone any favours, because while No Limit is doing, their production is fantastic, their content's not that great. And then you've got, Ace Boxing with Angelo DiCarlo and Tasman 5 Mixed Francis, who I believe fights are better, but their production value is nowhere near as good. And then you've also got the Boxing Super Series on 7+, which are basically just glorified club shows. So the last one they had with Team Ellis was just basically a glorified club show. But that's all they are. But it's grassroots stuff. So your boxers have got to start somewhere. So at the end of the day, you've got to look, well, these guys are getting exposure. They're getting notoriety. They're getting, primetime TV coverage. So it's a positive. It's a tick in the box. Tick in the box. So keep looking out for the channel. If I get enough people to watch this channel, I'll do more videos. I'll still be on T Street, of course. And that's it for now, guys. So like and subscribe to the video. This is your old mate, Big J. Leave suggestions in the comments for what I'm going to call the channel. I was just thinking Big J's Big Talk, or Big J's Rant, or some shit. Fist of Fury podcast, or some bloody thing. I'll think of something, just something where I can basically talk about any subject that I want. It's not just going to be boxing, it's going to be all sorts of things. So there's a few things happening out on social media. There's a couple of things that happen in the country politically, which I don't like. So other things I'm going to get into. But for now, that's old mate Big J. Like and subscribe to the video, and we'll see you again another day.